Kash Patel didn't need a long speech to make his point. With just one sentence, he delivered a blow so precise and pointed that the entire room fell silent. His words were sharp, calculated, and charged with a conviction that cut through the noise, silencing critics and allies alike. Jasmine Crockett, known for her combative style and outspoken presence, had met her match, and it was clear to everyone watching. It began as a typical political exchange, with Crockett pressing Patel on issues tied to national security, oversight, and political loyalty. She leaned into her questions with familiar vigor, expecting the kind of defensive stammering that often comes when a witness is on the ropes. But Patel wasn't flustered. He wasn't even remotely unsettled. His demeanor was calm, almost eerily, composed as he waited for the perfect moment. As Crockett wrapped up her line of questioning, layered with sarcasm and a tone of moral authority, Patel leaned forward slightly. With a deliberate pause, he delivered his response. One sentence laced with just the right mix of facts and irony that turned the spotlight right back on her. The sentence didn't need to be shouted. It didn't rely on theatrics. It simply exposed a contradiction so clear that even those predisposed to dismiss him had to sit up and take notice. The immediate reaction was tangible. Gasps, muted murmurs, a visible shift in body language across the room. Crockett, usually quick to retort, hesitated. It was the kind of moment that hangs in the air, thick with the unspoken acknowledgement that someone had just taken control of the room. The silence wasn't just an absence of noise. It was the weight of realization settling over everyone present. What made Patel's sentence so impactful wasn't just its content. It was the way he used it to dismantle an entire narrative in a fraction of a second. He didn't grandstand. He didn't gloat. He simply flipped the script, and in doing so, revealed a deeper truth that many had either ignored or underestimated. It wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a reality check. Observers and commentators were quick to note the exchange. Social media lit up within minutes, with clips of the moment spreading rapidly across platforms. Some praised Patel's precision and composure. Others debated the implications of what had just been said. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just another soundbite in the echo chamber of politics. It was a decisive pivot in the conversation, one that couldn't be easily walked back or reframed. Crockett eventually regained her footing, as any seasoned political figure would. She moved on to other topics, attempting to redirect the energy of the hearing. But the moment lingered. Patel's sentence had already done its work. It had cut through the posturing, disrupted the rhythm, and left an impression that would outlast the session itself. In a world where political discourse is often dominated by volume and spectacle, this moment stood out precisely because of its restraint. Patel's command of the situation reminded everyone that sometimes power doesn't lie in shouting the loudest. It lies in saying the one thing no one can ignore. The aftermath of the exchange will likely fuel commentary for days, maybe weeks. But in that single sentence, Kash Patel didn't just win a moment. He reshaped the conversation entirely. As the session resumed, the dynamic had clearly shifted. Lawmakers, staffers, and spectators who had been leaning forward in anticipation just minutes earlier were now silent, digesting what had just happened. Patel didn't revel in the moment. There was no smirk, no added commentary to drive the point further. His silence following the sentence was as deliberate as the words themselves. He had said enough, and he knew it. Jasmine Crockett, to her credit, attempted to push forward with resolve. Her tone remained confident, but the undercurrent of tension was undeniable. A slight change in posture, a flicker of hesitation before her next question. It wasn't lost on anyone watching. She, like the rest of the room, recognized that Patel had just altered the power dynamic, if only temporarily. What continued to elevate the moment was how effortlessly Patel returned to a measured, methodical tone. He answered follow-up questions with the same calm clarity, never once referencing the earlier exchange. That kind of restraint is rare in today's polarized environment, where zingers and viral clips often overshadow substance. Yet it was that very restraint that gave his words so much weight. He wasn't there to score points. He was there to deliver a message, and he had done exactly that. Outside the hearing, the reaction was even more intense. News outlets scrambled to unpack the exchange. Analysts debated the broader meaning. Was it a turning point in public perception? A rare check against the unchecked aggression often seen in these sessions? Online, partisans on both sides had their takes, but even critics of Patel acknowledged the sharpness of his delivery. It was the kind of moment that transcended typical partisan squabbles, forcing even the most skeptical observers to acknowledge the skill behind it. What made it particularly remarkable was that Patel didn't rely on personal attacks or partisan smears. His sentence pointed directly at an inconsistency, framed with clarity and undeniable logic. That's what made it land so effectively. It wasn't just a mic drop. It was an exposure of a double standard that left no room for rebuttal without sounding evasive or defensive. The aftermath in the political sphere will ripple quietly at first. Backroom conversations, strategy meetings, reconsidered approaches to future hearings. Members of Congress who witnessed it firsthand will remember it, and it will likely influence how they engage not only with Patel, but with future witnesses who show the same kind of preparation and confidence. As for Patel, this moment may well define a new chapter in his public persona. He's no stranger to controversy or spotlight, but this exchange added a layer of credibility and poise that even his detractors will find difficult to dismiss. In a single, unflinching sentence, he reminded everyone that sometimes the most powerful weapon in a political confrontation isn't volume, it's precision. And while the cameras moved on, the soundbite will linger. Not because it was flashy, but because it was true. In a climate overflowing with noise, that kind of clarity is rare, and when it hits, it echoes far beyond the walls of any committee room. In the days that followed, Patel's words continued to resonate, not just through social media clips or TV headlines, but in the subtler ways that mark a political shift. Staffers on Capitol Hill referenced the moment in quiet conversations, some admiring the tactical precision, others nervously reconsidering their own lines of questioning for future hearings. Behind closed doors, committee members began adjusting strategies, aware now that Patel was not just another witness to be grilled. He was a player who could turn the tables with a single, well-timed sentence. Meanwhile, Crockett's camp attempted to downplay the incident, framing it as a heated exchange lost in the chaos of a tense session. But no matter how it was spun, the moment couldn't be undone. The clip was everywhere. Analysts replayed it on cable panels. Independent journalists broke it down frame by frame. Even late-night hosts, often drawn to spectacle over substance, took notice, not for laughs, but for the sheer shock of seeing a narrative flipped so completely, so efficiently in real time. The power of the sentence wasn't just in the words themselves, but in what they represented. Preparation meeting opportunity. Patel, often portrayed in the media through a polarized lens, had for a moment stepped beyond the caricatures. He came prepared not just with facts but with presence. He understood the weight of timing, the economy of language, and the value of composure under fire. That kind of discipline is rare in high-stakes public hearings, where emotion and ego often override message. But Patel showed something different. He showed command. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't break character. He didn't insult, he simply revealed. And in doing so, he reminded everyone watching that the most devastating arguments are often the quietest ones, grounded in truth and delivered without theatrics. This wasn't just a victory in a political skirmish. It was a showcase of how influence is wielded in today's media-saturated arena. One sentence, strategically placed, can outlast hours of debate. It can reframe a story, redirect public opinion, and plant seeds that grow long after the headlines fade. And that's exactly what happened here. For Patel, the moment may boost his standing among supporters and skeptics alike. It was the kind of poised defiance that appeals beyond party lines, speaking to those weary of sound bites and craving substance. For Crockett, it was a rare stumble, a pause in her usually rapid-fire momentum that raised questions about readiness, about overreach, and about how well public figures anticipate sharp, unconventional challenges. In the end, the hearing moved on. but the message remained. Patel had reminded the room and the country that the right words, spoken at the right time, still hold power, not because they're loud, but because they're undeniable. He didn't need a speech. He didn't need a platform. He needed only a sentence, and that sentence left a mark. In the weeks after the exchange, political insiders and media commentators continued to revisit the moment, not just for its shock value, but because it highlighted a deeper truth about today's political theater. Most of it is performance, but every now and then someone breaks through with substance. Kash Patel's sentence had become more than just a viral moment. It was now being dissected in op-eds and think tank roundtables, cited as a textbook example of rhetorical precision. Political strategists praised the tactic as a masterclass in verbal discipline. Even critics grudgingly admitted that Patel had done what few manage in these heated public forums. He had flipped control of the room with no theatrics, no yelling, just the power of truth delivered without fear. Capitol Hill has seen its share of fiery exchanges, but what set this one apart was the silence that followed. That silence, the stunned, awkward stillness after Patel's response, was telling. It wasn't confusion, it was recognition. A line had been crossed, not in tone, but in clarity. There was no comeback, because to push back against it would only deepen the damage. For Jasmine Crockett, known for her aggressive style and unwavering confidence, the exchange created a rare vulnerability. Her supporters rallied behind her, of course, brushing it off as one moment in a long battle. But the fact remained, for once she wasn't the one steering the dialogue. She was forced into a defensive position, and that hesitation was caught on camera for the world to see. This wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a collision of two approaches to power. Crockett relied on confrontation, energy, and presence. Patel, on the other hand, relied on calculation, clarity, and control, and in that particular moment, control won. As the news cycle turned over and new stories emerged, the clip continued to circulate, quietly persistent, resurfacing each time the debate over accountability, narrative control, or political showmanship came back into the spotlight. And it inevitably will. Because what Patel delivered wasn't just a sentence, it was a lesson. A reminder that in a time when politics is often reduced to noise, precision can still silence a room. The broader impact is still unfolding. It may shift how future witnesses prepare, knowing now that even a single response can reshape a narrative. It may influence how committee members craft their questions, avoiding traps that can be turned back on them. And it certainly cements Patel's role not just as a participant in political discourse, but as someone capable of commanding it. His supporters hailed the moment as a victory for truth over spin. His opponents warned against reading too much into a single exchange. But whether admired or resented, what Kash Patel did was undeniable. He demonstrated that facts, delivered with confidence and poise, still have the power to disrupt, and in Washington, where moments come and go with the speed of a news cycle, one sentence, when perfectly timed, can echo long after the room has emptied. As the ripple effects continued, it became evident that this was not just a viral moment. It had turned into a reference point. Political commentators began invoking it as a cautionary tale and a tactical blueprint. On conservative talk shows, Patel was praised as a sharp mind who outmaneuvered a grandstanding opponent. In more centrist circles, analysts observed the power shift with fascination, pointing out how rare it is to see such composure in the face of political heat. Even in liberal media spaces, there was quiet acknowledgement. Patel had landed a clean, undeniable hit. In private, staffers across the aisle took notes. Members of Congress started reviewing their own lines of questioning more carefully, knowing now that the risk of being publicly reversed was very real. The incident underscored something everyone in Washington already knew, but rarely admitted. Perception is everything, and a single moment can define, derail, or elevate a public figure in the court of public opinion. Patel, however, didn't take a victory lap. He didn't tweet about it. He didn't make the rounds on every news show. Instead, he let the moment speak for itself. That silence only amplified the weight of what he had said. It demonstrated a level of media discipline that is often lacking in today's political ecosystem, where attention is currency and everyone seems desperate to spend it. By doing nothing, Patel let others do the talking. And they did. Clips of the exchange were replayed in training sessions for media consultants, used as an example of how to pivot, control tone, and turn defense into offense with elegance rather than aggression. Communication strategists dissected the moment to teach junior staffers what it means to own the room without theatrics. It was the kind of impact you can't plan, but that only comes when preparation, timing, and temperament align perfectly. Meanwhile, Crockett faced increasing scrutiny, not for her politics but for the handling of that specific interaction. Supporters encouraged her to push past it, and she did, with her usual fire and confidence. But privately, sources suggested her team reviewed the tape closely, analyzing what went wrong. They understood the stakes. In a town where careers are made and broken in seconds, even one sentence can alter the trajectory of perception. What made Patel's sentence land with such force was its balance of substance and restraint. He didn't resort to personal jabs. He didn't deflect. He cut straight to the heart of a contradiction and exposed it in real time. That's why it worked. It wasn't about partisanship, it was about authenticity. The truth of his point was self-evident, and that's why it couldn't be dismissed. Months from now, few will remember every detail of that committee hearing, but that single moment will likely endure. It will be remembered not because it was loud or outrageous, but because it was true, and because truth, when delivered with calm precision, has a power few can challenge. In the end, Kash Patel didn't just dominate an exchange. He demonstrated a command of the room and the narrative that even seasoned politicians strive for. In just one sentence, he reminded the country that strength doesn't always come with volume. Sometimes it comes with silence that follows a truth no one saw coming. And that silence, filled with stunned recognition, is often the loudest sound of all. And that control, over the room, over the tone, and ultimately over the narrative, was what elevated Patel's response from a mere rebuttal to a turning point. It was a reminder that in Washington, where power is often projected through spectacle, real influence can still come from substance. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult. He made his point with clarity and let the truth do the heavy lifting. As time went on, the clip became more than a moment. It became a case study. Universities used it in political communication courses to demonstrate the difference between emotional reaction and strategic delivery. Legal analysts cited it as an example of witness control under pressure. Even political opponents, while reluctant to praise Patel publicly, acknowledged that he had raised the bar for future hearings. He hadn't just survived the interrogation, he'd reversed it. For Crockett, the sting of that moment faded in public but remained a quiet reminder of how quickly the spotlight can shift. She continued to speak forcefully in hearings, continued to champion her causes, but there was a perceptible change in how some approached her. Less deference, more caution. One sentence had created a shadow, a hesitation, and that's all it takes in politics to change momentum. Meanwhile, Patel's quiet rise was unmistakable. He didn't chase headlines after the exchange, he didn't need to. Others did it for him. The sentence he delivered, never repeated by him in public, never embellished, continued to do its work long after it was spoken. It gave him what so many chase but few earn: credibility without self-promotion. And in that silence that followed the moment, amid the stunned expressions and the shifting energy in the room, one thing became crystal clear. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it speaks once, calmly, precisely, and then lets the silence say the rest. That was the genius of Kash Patel's delivery. Not just that he silenced a room, but that he did so without needing to speak again. Long after the headlines had moved on, the echo of that moment remained embedded in the collective memory of Washington. It became shorthand in political circles, the Patel sentence, an inside reference to a masterstroke of verbal strategy. No lengthy debate, No circular reasoning, no evasion. Just one surgical line that left no space for retort. It became the kind of moment strategists and advisors aspire to engineer but rarely achieve. Organic, undeniable, and immune to spin. And while the political world thrives on confrontation, what made Patel's sentence unforgettable was how it disarmed confrontation altogether. It left no fuel for the fire. It wasn't designed to inflame, it was designed to end. It closed the loop with such finality that even Crockett, skilled in rhetorical comebacks, found no immediate purchase for a reply. That rare, breathless pause in the chamber, that hesitation, was more powerful than any counterattack. In the months that followed, Patel's influence grew, not just as a former official, but as a formidable communicator. He had demonstrated what many overlook in the current climate. That mastery over words is not just about knowing what to say, but knowing when and how to say it. And more importantly, knowing when not to say anything else. Other witnesses who came before Congress afterward were different. They studied the moment. They came better prepared, coached more carefully, told not just to defend but to watch for the opportunity to reverse. The tone of hearings subtly shifted. There was less shouting, more calculation, more focus on facts, less reliance on bravado. Patel hadn't just won an exchange, he'd quietly set a new standard for how to handle the heat. For Jasmine Crockett, the experience may have been a humbling one, but it also served as a reminder of the stakes at that level of visibility. Her resilience returned quickly, and her voice remained prominent in committee rooms and media circuits. But the Patel encounter was a footnote she couldn't fully erase. It followed her, a reminder that substance beats showmanship when wielded with precision. Outside the political bubble, the public saw something rare, not just a partisan clash, but a flash of clarity. A reminder that despite the noise and the endless cycle of outrage, a single moment of truth, simply delivered, still carries power. In an era where volume often drowns out meaning, Patel's one-sentence dismantling stood out like a quiet thunderclap, and that is perhaps the legacy of that moment. Not just that one man stunned a room with a single sentence, but that he did it without needing the last word. In politics, that kind of confidence is rare. In the eyes of many, it's what turned a brief exchange into a lasting impression. Years from now, as new hearings unfold and new names take the spotlight, Patel's sentence will still be remembered. Not because it was loud, but because it was sharp. Not because it embarrassed someone, but because it revealed something. And in the world of politics, revelation is the most powerful tool of all. That moment, etched into the collective consciousness of political observers and participants alike, serves as a blueprint for what effective communication looks like under pressure. Kash Patel showed that in the often chaotic and performative arena of Washington, mastery over language and timing can upend narratives and command respect, sometimes with just a single sentence. This exchange also highlighted a deeper truth about political discourse today. Authenticity and clarity can cut through the noise better than any rehearsed talking point or theatrical outburst. Patel's quiet confidence reminded everyone that strength isn't measured by volume, but by the ability to wield facts and truth with precision and calm. For many watching, it was a moment of clarity in a turbulent landscape, a reminder that, amidst the endless battles of rhetoric and spin, the power of well-chosen words endures. It is a lesson not just for politicians, but for anyone who understands the weight of influence and the value of speaking with purpose. As the political theater continues to evolve, that sentence remains a testament to the enduring power of substance over spectacle. Kash Patel didn't just win a verbal exchange. He redefined how influence is wielded in a world hungry for meaning, and in doing so, he left an indelible mark on the discourse itself. Because sometimes, one sentence is all it takes to change everything.